I don't have the stats exactly, but I am willing to bet that 99% of podcasts never make any money. And today we are going to talk about why that is. Podcast Growth Nation, today for episode number 161, 99% of podcasters never make money. Here's why. You have heard me say this a million times. Creativity is the difference between a podcaster who makes money and a podcaster who doesn't. That's one thought to start this episode, right? And again, I want to get right into it. I want to get right into the good stuff. Your time is valuable. I want to make sure we utilize it to the best of our capabilities. So that's one thing. Creativity. Okay, well, why? Because most of us are convinced the only way we're going to make money is by going in the traditional route of sponsorships, ads, affiliates. Sponsorships, ads, affiliates, sponsorships, ads, affiliates. And those become the only options for us. And then we are convinced we must do things that will grow the show to the point where we get to, let's say it's 10,000 listens a month, and we're able to monetize through that. So again, the industry standards for ads and sponsors are $25 to $50 per 1,000 listens, right? So for every 1,000 listens you have, let's say you get $50. Well, if you are getting 10,000 listens, that means you're getting $500, hypothetically. Even that is not necessarily going to be enough for you to go full-time. Might not be enough for you to even cover costs depending on what you're spending. Let's say you have a ChatGPT subscription and you pay for your host and you pay for Opus clips and you pay for whatever, a bunch of stuff, right? You might be $200-$300 a month in subscriptions alone. It might help you make a little bit of money, but that's not going to be enough probably. But for a lot of us, that is what we are convinced because we see things, oh, Joe Rogan got a $250 million deal with Spotify and this. Yes, I understand. I understand that is what we see. I am telling you right now, Joe Rogan could have made a lot more money without sponsorships. I'm certain of that. I'm certain that if he just stayed on YouTube and did what he did, he could make that money, if not more, if he had merchandise and he had other stuff. He kind of took the easy way out when it came to making money. And again, I'm not saying he did anything wrong. He doesn't necessarily want to work anymore. He doesn't want to turn this into like a business. He's got enough stuff going on. But we're convinced that that's the way that we have to do it. Just like a lot of us were convinced that you have to go to college and you have to get a degree and you have to get a 9-to-5 and you have to do boom, boom, because that's what everybody else that is quote unquote successful did. Podcasting is the same thing. So one problem that gets caused is a lot of us don't come into this with creativity and an understanding that there are many ways to make this work. That's one thing. The other thing is, we have the wrong expectation. We have the wrong expectation of how this is going to work. And this is a big expectation that I see all the time. I'll tell people, well, no, we don't make money directly from the podcast. What do you mean? So you don't make money from the podcast? No, it's not like that. It's not that one listen equates to $1. It doesn't work like that for us because we don't have ads or sponsorships or affiliates. Well, then how do you do it? Well, it's a piece of the business. It's a big piece of the business. It has allowed us to build a community. It has allowed us to brand ourselves. It has allowed us to create marketing, to create frameworks, to create demand, to create relationships, to create collaborations, to create momentum. The podcast creates opportunities for monetization, not necessarily monetization. And if this is the only episode you ever listen to and you never listen to another episode of PGU and you never take anything else away, you don't have to do it that way. It doesn't have to be, quote unquote, directly from the podcast. It doesn't have to be. Think about it this way. This podcast, I will never, I can say that with confidence. I'm never going to have ads on here. I could have 1 million listens tomorrow. I would not have an ad from BetterHelp or whatever it is. I don't want to do it that way. Could I make money with that? Sure, but that's not how I want to do it. So then, well, okay, how could you possibly make money from this podcast? By coaching, by courses, when I write a book, speaking, all of that stuff. That all is a byproduct of the podcast. But here is what happens. I was on a call. I did a podcast breakthrough session with someone today. And they said, yep, I started the podcast 6 months ago. And I'm having guests on because my goal is to have a guest on and then for them to bring me in to do a speech. I said, okay. And that's like the main thing, right? That's how you want to drive revenue from the podcast. And they said, yeah. And I said, I would start doing way more solo episodes than you're doing guest episodes. The likelihood, if we just think of it from a probability perspective, the likelihood of them hosting an event and then having you on and then having money to pay you and then them knowing you're a speaker is just relatively low because you don't have any speaking content out there. So what you really need to do is use the podcast as an opportunity to brand yourself, to market yourself, to build relationships. Yes, but nobody knows what you do yet. You're not going to accidentally monetize the podcast. That is so statistically rare. That is just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I'd be lying to you if I put wind into your sails and told you it was. It just is so rare. There has to be a level of strategy under it. Now, this person I talked to had a level of strategy. I'll have a guest on. Maybe we'll target event planners and that type of stuff. And then we'll go from there. And I said, well, you had me on your show, and I didn't get any email from you after asking about stages or speaking or any of that. Right now, there's a kink in the hose. So the podcast is not working the way it's supposed to. So that is the thought for today's episode. 99% of podcasters never make money because they have the wrong expectation. They think there's only one way to do it, and they don't have, I won't say they don't have creativity. They're not practicing creativity as much as they could. If you're a podcaster who is new and you want to turn this into a business, start reading business books. I would literally suggest that over podcasting books. If I had a book about podcasting and you came to me and said, hey, I want to be a professional podcaster who turns it into a business, should I buy your book? I would probably say, like, here's a list of 3 books I would read first. One, Business Made Simple by a gentleman named Donald Miller is a great book about business. Great book. And then Jim Collins has a lot of books about business and like really successful businesses and the fundamentals behind them. And then there's a book called Upstream by Dan Heath. It's either Chip Heath or Dan Heath. I think it's Dan Heath. But it talks about how one thing creates other things and the thing that is right in front of you starts upstream. So the thought process was this. There's 2 brothers that are at a river. They're getting ready to go swimming. And they take their shirts off, they get their towels ready, and they're ready to dive in. And they see a kid who is drowning floating down the river. And they're freaking out. They're like, what is going on? What do we do? What are we supposed to do? They see another kid and another kid and another kid. One brother jumps in to save the kids that are right in front of them. The other brother runs upstream to figure out where these kids are coming from in the first place. It's a really good example of business in general. It's not just about the podcast. It's about what the podcast creates. It's about what we do before it. It's about what we do after it. The podcast is more of a piece than it is everything. Now, for me, it's a really big piece because we have 2,000 and some odd episodes, and we have 161 episodes over here. It's a bigger piece for us than maybe it will be for you. But sales, you got to learn sales, learning about business, learning about influence, learning about margins, learning about numbers. You got to treat it like a business. You've heard me say that a million times. But one of the pieces to treating it like a business is to learn about business.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hurwitz. So last year I wanted to quit everything. I wanted to throw in the towel. I wanted to hang up my microphone. And Kevin said no. Kevin said, keep going, Jen. You've got this. And oh my God, I'm going to cry. And I did. Coaches need coaches, y'all. And working with Kevin has been one of the best experiences of my life. Oh my God, I'm crying. Kevin, you are the best. I could not do this without you. And thank you. Thank you for being you and the amazing human that you are.
So I think what happens for a lot of us is we fall in love with podcasting and we say, well, it's a passion project. If I could make money with it, That would be awesome, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And for some people, that's totally fine. Cool. And I'm not saying you have to want to make money, but if you want to do this full time, you kind of do, because it's going to require some level of money to live as a human being. But we get into it loving podcasting, not necessarily knowing business. It's a big difference, right? There's a big difference. This is why I believe that podcasting is not for everyone. Maybe I might be the only podcast coach out there that says, look, I don't think most people should have podcasts, because what you may need to learn in order to get the results that you ultimately want might be beyond what you want to do. So I would say business books and sales books and numbers books would be very valuable to learn. And I'm telling you, 99% of podcasters never make money. 99% of podcasters don't actually look at it from a business perspective. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you any of those things. It makes it so you're trying to create something that's sustainable. If I can't sustain this, I can't add value for a long period of time, and this all dies. And then I don't get to do this anymore. And then this podcast goes away. If business doesn't make money, it cannot continue. Now, I'm not saying that's the number one point, right? I've been on podcasts as a guest where the host literally said, I don't care about the audience. I just use this as an opportunity to get clients. You're not my type of person, if that's the case, because you're thinking about money in the business first. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. I'm not saying to do that, but it can't be last. Money can't be last. Well, if I make it, that'll be cool, unless you're okay with never making it, right? That's kind of the way it works. So big takeaways in today's episode. I guess it's going to be a quicker one. I usually say it'll be 10 minutes and ends up being 20. Maybe today it won't be the case. Big takeaways. 1, our expectations of what is available to us are off, because instead of going and learning more about business and what's working, we look at what we see working at the top of the industry. And that's always dangerous, because that is not always a suggestion of what you should be doing. Honestly, if anything, it's a really good suggestion that there are other opportunities out there that other people aren't doing. So that market is untapped. That's one piece of it. The second piece is, let's get creative and let's think outside the box. You never know. I had a call with a podcaster the other day. Shout out to you if you're listening. And this podcaster is a pilot. And they said, I'd love to monetize it eventually, and I'm not necessarily sure where to start. And I said, well, you're a pilot. You're a female pilot. I'm guessing at some point there'll be a lot of other female pilots listening, or females listening to you in the aviation industry that maybe want to be a pilot at some point. You could have checklists. You could have courses. You could have mentorship. You're not necessarily going to get a sponsorship. Now, you can do that if you want, but you don't have to. You don't have to. Sponsorships require X amount of listens. The other pieces of it don't require as many listens. That's all. It's just a different game that you're trying to play. Now, I want you to play the game that works for you, but you don't have to play it the way that everybody else is. And this is literally what I would do. If you are a coach out there right now, this is literally what I would do. Do a solo episode solving a very specific problem that your audience has, that you know your audience has, that you can help them solve. Offer a free session to them or a free month to them, whatever. I would say free month. Have a link in the show notes where they can click it and they can sign up for the free month. Coach them for free, and then see what happens at the end of the month. If nobody reaches out, then we have to do some recognizance, whatever the word is, where you go find people. So let's post a story about the podcast episode. Who's watching the story? Let's start conversations with them. That is just sales. That's the process of sales. I'm not saying you have to pitch them and say, hey, I saw that you watched my story. Are you interested in signing up for this? I'm not saying that. We just have to build conversation. And then from that conversation, you might find opportunity. But that's like the start of it. So it would literally be, if it was 3 things you can do every day, and I know we've talked about this in the past, 1 everyday post on your story about, it doesn't have to be about your specific niche, but like a root of it, right? That's 1. 2, connect with somebody through your story every day. That would be number 2. And then number 3, it would probably be try to add a name to your prospecting list. So all a prospecting list is somebody who has come in contact with you and or the quote-unquote business. Oh, yeah, I remember that person reached out a long time ago. They were saying they might want to start a podcast one day. I should check in to see how they're doing. For you, hey, yeah, it's interesting. I remember that person reached out and they were talking about how they really wanted to get into meditation more, but they felt like they were struggling with it. I'm a meditation coach. Let me check in and see how they're doing. That's all sales. But if you assume they're just going to come to you, that's where a lot of this gets tied up. I'm telling you, most of us, it's not that we can't be successful. It's that we haven't, I'm not going to say we've been lied to about what it takes, but it just requires more of you going out and finding people than I think a lot of people realize. I think that's an important understanding. Look, I'm going to be very honest and very vulnerable and very transparent here for a second, okay? As of today, we have filled 19 groups of group coaching with 10 people in each group. It's 190 people, 190 seats. Out of those 190 seats, I think maybe 10 of them have been from people who heard about it on a podcast episode, went to the website, and just booked tickets. The other 180 were one-on-one messages. And if you're listening to the show and you've gone through group coaching, I messaged you or Alan messaged you or Amy messaged you. Somebody messaged you and said, hey, I feel like this would be a really good opportunity for you based on your goals. Is this something you might be interested in? This is coming from a podcast that has 1 odd million listens and has coached hundreds of people. It's not that we just send out an email and a bunch of people come. It takes one-on-one messages. So do your best now, as early as you may be, to create the system to start one-on-one messages. Because I'm telling you, that is the big differentiator. I was working with a client one time, and she said, I'm really ready and I'm really focused on growing my coaching business. And I said, cool. How many prospects do you have? And she said, what do you mean? I was like, where's your list? How many people do you know that are in your community? And she's like, I don't have one. I said, all right, that's the start. And then we started there. And on our coaching calls, I would literally go into her DMs with her and I would help her answer questions and move the process of sales along, because that's what needed to happen. She had people that were prospects and they were interested in what she does, but she didn't know how to move the conversation along. And those people aren't necessarily just going to sign up cold. It just doesn't go back to the conversion episode. It just doesn't happen that way. So it's up to us. But there are some fundamental skills that we're going to need to learn that are outside of podcasting. Podcasting, speaking, interviewing, great. Obviously important as a podcaster. Yes. But there are a ton of other things too. Okay, let's do it this way. This is a really good way to think about it. And then I'll get out of your ears for the day. Contractors might be really good at building. They know exactly how to build whatever it is that you want. If they don't know anything about numbers, if they don't know anything about sales, and if they don't know anything about marketing, they are no different, and they're not going to set themselves apart from other contractors, and there is a likelihood that they go broke. Now, yes, they might get referrals and all that, but let's assume they don't. They're kind of in trouble. They know contracting really well, and that's awesome. But they got to know everything else well that connects to contracting. That is the issue, and the reason 99% of podcasters never make money. Because nobody is just going to throw money at you. It just doesn't work that way. Now, one of the reasons I want to be as successful as I do is because I would love to have like a quarterly, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'd like to have like a quarterly grant where I can give 5 podcasters X amount of money. I don't know how it's going to work. That will happen. Mark my words. That's going to happen in the future. I just don't know what it's going to look like. So maybe at that point I'll say, look, if you're one of those podcasters who wants somebody to throw money at you, fill out the thing in the show notes and I'll go through and see who's the best fit. But until then, I can't imagine many people are going to be throwing money at podcasters. So it's up to us. It's up to us at the end of the day. And I hope you're studying business more, and I hope you're studying sales more, and I hope it's all making sense how all of this connects. That is the ultimate goal. Yes, some people have millions and millions and millions of listens a month, and that's how they're going to monetize. Yes. but you don't have to be that. And honestly, statistically speaking, most of us are not going to be that. Now, I don't think most of us are going to be where we are with 2,000 some odd episodes and that type of thing either, but there is a lot of room in between. There's a lot of room in between to make $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month. Like, there's a lot of room in between being one of the biggest podcasts in the world and finding a way to monetize sustainably. I mean, there's a drastic sliding scale when it comes to that. So I hope you're studying the other stuff, because that other stuff is going to matter just as much, if not more, than the podcasting piece. All right, cool. If you want to be 1%, you want to be the 1% of podcasters that make money and you have no idea how, you don't know where to start, you have an idea, but you're not sure how to execute it, I will have my link in the show notes for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session. I'd love to help you, and we can leave with an action plan, and hopefully from there, you'll be able to go do the thing. And if you are looking for a group of podcasters who are chasing similar things to you, they want to add value, they want to help people, and they want to find a way to make it sustainable through profit, we have a Facebook group called Podcast Growth Nation. We'll have the link in the show notes for that as well. All right, where were we at? 20 minutes. We did it again. As always, keep on podcasting. Keep on crushing it, and I will talk to you all next week.